Well, Silksong is harder than its predecessor, and some fans are taking issue with that. Or maybe they're just admitting that they can't really hang with the game. Now, it's been quite a while since I beat the first Hollow Knight, and I want to admit, I am having a tough time with some of the platforming and some of the fights in Silksong, but largely I have been enjoying myself. Now, there are some sections with like the pogo jumps off those red balloons, and it really, led to some salty moments, but there's also been some of the areas with like non-traditional boss fights where there's like multiple waves of enemies. There's one with these birds. I put it on Twitter, and it's kind of pulling numbers right now because everybody is, resonating with and commiserating with me about the fact that these birds were so frustrating, okay? I want to break down what some of the biggest areas of tension are with people, and maybe we'll get to the bottom of this and see, are they going to make any changes? Are they going to listen to the community on some of these issues? Or are they going to say, no, that's the way the game is intended to be played? So if you like this content, hit like and subscribe. So first, I went to Steam and I looked, and I'm like, okay, the score for this game is unbelievable. So hear me when I say that. This game is doing incredibly well, but these were some of the issues in the negative reviews. The first thing I have seen talked about is the damage output from the enemies. Okay, bigger hits from enemies, and you can't heal as often. They adjusted the healing mechanic to where you have to fill it, and then you use it, and you heal for 3. You can't just like periodically use it for 1 if you would like. That's how it worked in the first game. Now, I will say, I've not had any major issue with the big damage output, other than if you get hit while you're healing, it seems to not just cancel the healing, but then also take damage. Many games where you're healing and get hit, it sort of gives you credit for the heal and then takes a chunk away, so the heal's less effective. Also, within the boss fights themselves, I have said, I think doing contact damage that takes away 2 hearts is a little extreme. If I misread a telegraph, if you land a hit on me, that's totally fine. You want to take 2 damage because it's a boss and you want it to be more punishing, that's totally okay. However, if I just like bump into the boss, that taking away 2 hearts, I think is a little extreme. That's really my only minor criticism. Other than that, I have thought the boss fights were immaculate and fun and very rewarding while also being punishing. The second thing people are zeroing in on is the economics of this. They feel like there aren't enough beads dropping from enough enemies. It leads to these awkward moments where they feel like they have to farm just to unlock a bench. There are some sections where the bench costs money to unlock. This has led to some frustration. People are like, man, I finally got through this insane fight. I finally got through this really, really hard section, and I don't have enough beads to unlock the bench. I think that's pretty frustrating. I think that's worthy of some criticism to say maybe you guys should have thought about this, since one of the criticisms are there's a lot of scarcity of benches in the game. Maybe they should have said, well, if you're going to make the benches so scarce, don't have them cost anything. But I mean, again, this is their choice. This is their game. If they want the world to be that punishing, I'm going to give you my conclusion about the game. Is it more of a Metroidvania or a Souls game in a moment? Because I do think that is a significant aspect of where some of the pain comes from. A third criticism I've seen is the using of the tool action. Instead of it just being the Y or the triangle button, it is a 2-button press. That means you can mess this up and use some of that limited resource of your silk, like having to hold up and press a button. As soon as I saw that tutorial, I grew concerned myself. I was like, that's a little bit awkward. What if I just want to jump and then, throw the dagger really quickly? Right? What if I don't want to have to hold up? That makes it a little bit awkward. I think that, again, is a fair criticism. Why can't it just be a single button press? Fourth, some of the criticism that we largely centered a lot of my live stream around today is the dreaded runbacks, okay? This is related to a very significant lack of bench locations in some areas. One of the members of our community even said, one of the worst areas in the game that is super punishing and super hard, there's just one bench throughout the entire area. Also, there's a section where the runback, we watched it this morning, there was a lot of pogoing off of enemies, pogoing off of obstacles, lots of parkour, lots of wall jumps, just to get back to the boss. Lots of enemies, lots of potential pain, lots of potential health loss. My question is, why do this again? Now, this is really compounded by the damage output of the boss fights. You can die very, very quick in a fight and you learn very little, which I'm totally okay with. I like how difficult the boss fights have felt. They feel very rewarding when you finally beat them. But I've been told that the runbacks get worse as you go, which to me feels like a significant misfire. That is a huge waste of my time. If I flat tire on a boss or a particular fight, that happens in these games, and that's okay. I think you're going to have those flat tire moments where it just takes you a really long time to beat it. But that flat tire being punctuated by a consistent use of rerun where you're wasting my time. If half of the time I'm playing, I'm running back, I feel like that is a backwards design philosophy. These guys, we know, they dug down for 7 years and they weren't really paying attention to the internet. Well, I feel like they've really missed the boat on modern design amenities like a Stake of Marika in Elden Ring, or more prominent locations of your benches, or not charging people money for benches so that they can just sort of explore the game. So my conclusion is this game is far more Souls-like than Metroidvania. This actually feels more like a 2D Souls game that is also a Metroidvania. Like, it happens to be a Metroidvania, but it feels like its identity is more firmly rooted in some of the tropes of a Souls-like. You've got this currency that gets very invested. You've got these very, very frustrating runbacks. You've got these extremely punishing boss fights. All of those are tropes that you more commonly find in a Souls-like, not necessarily in a Metroidvania. I loved Ori 1. I loved Hollow Knight 1. I loved Ori 2. I loved Sundered. I loved Prince of Persia and the Lost Crown. I loved Nine Souls. Even recently, I played Shinobi, which wasn't exactly a Metroidvania, but it had a lot of Metroidvania elements. I loved all of those games. And Hollow Knight is making itself in a way to be difficult to enjoy. I feel like I'm having to fight through tedium to get to the parts that I enjoy. I like the boss fights. I like the intensity of the multi-wave fights. That bird fight was very frustrating, but what made it more frustrating was the run back. I couldn't just try again. You've got platforming and parkouring that is more difficult than the first game. That adds to this issue of the run back just taking a bunch of time. Now, the second thing I'll say here is the devs may respond to this. We saw this happen with Armored Core 6. They felt that the fail rate at Baltius was too high, so they made adjustments to that boss fight. They may say, hey, we're seeing lots of people kind of tap out with the game earlier than we expected, and that's kind of disappointing. If the main rub is runbacks, or the main rub is that sense of time being wasted, maybe they'll make adjustments and just say, hey, do you want to retry the boss or go back to your last bench? That would be an enormous quality of life fix. Now, that could be a pipe dream to essentially get a Stake of Marika or a retry mechanic in the game. Now, I was told by somebody who is further than me, there is a boss fight in particular where you spawn right outside the door. So they do it in one place. Maybe they could do it with all of the fights. The third thing I'll say is, I think there is some valid criticism. I don't think people just claiming, oh, the game is too hard, make it easier. I don't think that's valid. I think they made a game that they wanted to be difficult, and I think that that's totally fine. Like, I don't think asking for the game just to be made easier is something that is a specific criticism, like I did with contact damage in a boss fight, or let's get rid of some of this rerun and this retread. Why? Because it isn't fun and it wastes my time. It's not that it's too difficult. It just feels like this massive waste of time. I also think there is some pretty significant input reading in the game that I feel like is a valid criticism. One of the reasons that one bird fight in particular took a long time is there are birds that throw these blades, and they input read so much that it leads to the fight being elongated simply because they won't let you hit them. I was fighting one outside of this fight, just kind of out in the open area, and it got so irritating, I just ran away. I was like, this isn't fun. You're just flying away from me. Anytime I try to come over and hit you, you input read and you raise your elevation, or you drop down and hit me with contact damage. It just isn't fun. It's not difficult. I mean, I'm beating the bosses in the game. I'm progressing in the game. I'm not like getting stuck and throwing the towel in. I'm saying some of these elements feel very cheap and end up wasting your time to the point that you stop engaging with certain mechanics. If you're just constantly running past enemies to get back to the boss, or you're running past enemies because they're input reading and it's not fun to fight them, I would say that's a failure in the game design, because you're basically incentivizing a lack of engagement. You're incentivizing the player to engage with the game less instead of more. I don't think that's great design, and I don't think that is the whole game. I think it's just pieces of the game. I also think the benches costing currency maybe they should think about that. I just wonder what the choice there was, why you have particularly strong sections that are very difficult, punctuated by a bench that you have to pay for. Well, you might not have any currency if the previous area beat the crap out of you, okay? Overall, the game's score, it speaks volumes, okay? It's largely being enjoyed by pretty much everybody playing it. It has a 96% on PlayStation, a 92% on Steam, and an 86% on Xbox, okay? Even with the game score being a tad lower on Xbox, that's largely due to Game Pass. People are trying the game who might not enjoy the genre, they might not enjoy difficult games, and 86% is still a very good score. So while we wait to see if the devs adjust any of the things that, some of us are taking issue with, suffice it to say, the game is successful, but it is harder than the first in many ways. So be prepared if you decide to take the plunge. Ushka,